Hey everybody, Dan Ward here. In this short series of videos, we're going to explore some entrepreneurship lessons from my latest book, Lift. For those of you who haven't read it yet, Lift takes a look at aviation in the late 1800s. It tells the stories of people who tried and failed to develop airplanes in the decades immediately prior to the Wrights. As we'll see, their stories highlight a bunch of practices and principles that can help us be effective and successful entrepreneurs. As we look at their stories, we'll put a series of questions on the table that should help you develop your own entrepreneurship plan. Some of these questions you'll be able to answer right away. Others will take some time, and we hope you'll revisit them in the weeks ahead. Now, if you're looking for a process flow diagram for being an entrepreneur, I'm afraid it's going to look something like this. Now, we do have to present this information in some sort of order, and I think there's a certain logical flow, but please don't mistake this for a linear process or a checklist. Having said that, there is a pretty solid step one, and that is to do the reading. You know, one thing that distinguishes professionals from hobbyists is that professionals do the reading. They stay up to date on the latest developments, and they contribute to the wider conversation. In the context of writing Lift, I began by reading Octave Chanut's book, Progress in Flying Machines. Published in 1894, it assembled stories and data from virtually every aviation experiment anyone had ever done. He documented 400 years of failed aviation experiments. He also corresponded with aviators around the world, and he published their stories and their findings. This is a key behavior because you've got to know what's happening in the field if you're going to make a contribution. So the question for each of you to answer is pretty straightforward. How can you do the reading, and where can you join in the conversation? What books, what blogs, what podcasts, or other outlets can you engage with and contribute to? If you're not sure where to start and where to read, who can you ask for recommendations? Make a list of their names. And be sure to go wide. Don't limit yourself to technical journals. Honestly, fiction might be just as important as nonfiction. And then there's the question of when you'll do it. I do a lot of my reading over breakfast. The key is to make it a regular part of your routine. Part two, or maybe this is actually part of the previous step, is to find a problem that interests you. Personally, I found myself drawn to aviation in the late 1800s, and that's what led me to write Lift. Octave Chanut, on the other hand, was interested in solving the problem of flight, in part because of the reading he'd done, and then he did more reading because he was interested. Like I said, it's not a process flow diagram. So the next question to answer is, do you already have a problem you're interested in? How specific is it? How broad? How widespread? Who does it affect? Who else is interested in this problem? And how are people addressing it today? If you don't have a problem in mind, the solution is simple. Go back to step one and do the reading. Once you've got an interesting problem in mind, the next step is to deconstruct it. Chop it up into little pieces that you can tackle incrementally. The image on the screen is an example of what that looks like. In 1871, an inventor named Alphonse Pénaud built this little rubber band powered flying machine. Yeah, it was a fun toy. We still play with them today. But it was also a simple, elegant way to experimentally solve one small piece of the larger problem of flight. The question he was exploring was, where should we connect the wings to the fuselage? With sticks and paper in his backyard, he experimentally demonstrated that the wings should connect slightly behind the center of mass. He was doing big science on a shoestring budget, and he did it by focusing on the next piece of the puzzle to be solved. So, what's your equivalent of Pénaud's plane? What is the next piece of the puzzle to explore and solve? And how can you build a small, inexpensive, simple thing to test some possible solutions? That's probably not a question you can answer right now. Deconstructing a big problem often takes time and research. Okay, that's all for now, but dial in next time when we'll take a look at the next step, which this guy with a megaphone is helpfully illustrating. See you next time.